Millionaire visits his mother in the hospital, then sees his ex-wife with triplets next door. He gets stunned and can't move. A very beautiful story for my loyal, greatest and best family. Let's begin with love. Before we start, I just want one thing from you. Type present in the comments. Some men measure their wealth in dollars. Russell Phoenix would learn to measure his in the heartbeats he'd never heard. The elevator doors opened on the wrong floor. Russell had pressed 4, cardiac intensive care, where his mother lay fighting for her life. But his thumb had slipped, numb from gripping his phone too hard, and he'd hit 3 instead. Maternity. The smell hit him first. That particular combination of antiseptic and new life, of hope packaged in powder blue and pink balloons. He should have turned back immediately, should have hit the button and corrected his mistake, but something made him walk forward instead. Muscle memory, maybe, or fate wearing the costume of coincidence. He walked past rooms of exhausted joy, past fathers holding bundles like they contained the secrets of the universe, past grandmothers crying into their hands. Room 447 stood at the end of the corridor, door slightly ajar. Through the window, Russell Phoenix saw the end of his world. Julia Berry sat in a hospital bed, her dark hair pulled back in a way he remembered from 1,000 mornings. But everything else had changed. In her arms, she cradled an infant. No, 3 infants. 3 separate bassinets surrounded her bed. And as he watched, frozen in the doorway across the hall, she lifted each tiny body in turn, kissing foreheads with a tenderness that stabbed him somewhere below his ribs. Triplets. His legs stopped working. His breath stopped working. Time itself seemed to rebel against moving forward, because forward meant understanding. And understanding meant facing what he'd done. Julia looked different, thinner, older, carved down to something essential. There were shadows under her eyes that hadn't been there before, a hardness in her jaw that spoke of survival rather than living. But when she looked down at those 3 babies, her face transformed into something he'd thought he'd destroyed forever. Pure, uncomplicated love. A nurse walked past him, chart in hand, and Russell pressed himself against the wall like a criminal. "Congratulations to the mother," the nurse said to someone down the hall. 3 healthy girls after everything she went through. Miracle she and the babies survived, honestly. 3 girls. Russell's mind raced backward. The divorce had been final for over a year now. Before that, weeks of paperwork and lawyers. Before that, the night he'd come home and destroyed everything. The last time he'd touched his wife had been the night before that confession, when things were already broken, but neither of them knew it yet. The realization hit him like a physical blow. These were his daughters. These 3 lives existed because of a moment he'd been too selfish to honor, too broken to preserve. Julia shifted in the bed, and Russell's body made the decision his mind couldn't. He stepped back, then back again, then turned and walked quickly toward the elevator. His hand shook so badly it took 3 tries to hit the button. The doors opened. He stepped inside, pressed 4. The cardiac unit greeted him with beeping monitors and the smell of fear. His mother, Delphine Phoenix, lay in room 408, hooked to machines that kept her heart beating in rhythm. She looked small under the white sheets, smaller than he'd ever seen her. The surgeons had said 6 hours of surgery, said it went well, said she'd recover if infection didn't set in. Russell collapsed into the chair beside her bed and put his head in his hands. "Mom," he whispered to her unhearing ears. "Mom, I found her. I found Julia, and there are 3 babies, 3 daughters. Mine. They have to be mine, and she never told me, and I don't know what to do." Delphine's monitors beeped their steady rhythm. Her chest rose and fell. The machines breathed for her because her body had forgotten how. "What do I do?" Russell asked the silence. A nurse came in to check vitals, smiled sympathetically at what she must have assumed was a devoted son, and left. The clock on the wall said 8:15. The sun setting through the window painted everything orange and gold, the colors of endings. Russell sat there as the light died and darkness crept in. His phone buzzed 17 times, messages from people who thought they mattered, who wanted pieces of him for reasons that felt distant and meaningless now. He ignored them all. At some point, he walked to the window and looked down at the parking lot. Somewhere in this building, Julia Berry was learning how to be a mother. Somewhere above or below or beside him, his 3 daughters were learning how to breathe. He pressed his forehead against the cold glass and closed his eyes. The glass, fogged with his breath, cleared, fogged again. Breathing seemed like such a simple thing until you thought about it too hard. Until you realized how much could go wrong with each inhale, each exhale. How much could be lost in the space between one breath and the next. "Sir?" A different nurse stood in the doorway. "Visiting hours end in 30 minutes. Russell nodded without turning around. "Is there someone we can call for you? You look like you could use some support." "No," Russell said. "There's no one." The nurse hesitated, then left. Russell heard her soft-soled shoes squeaking away down the corridor, heard the distant crying of an infant from somewhere in the building, heard his own heart beating too fast in his chest. He returned to his mother's bedside and sat down heavily, took her hand. It felt papery and cold despite the warm room. "I don't know what to do," he said again. "I don't know if I have the right to do anything. I destroyed her, Mom. I looked at the woman who gave me everything and decided she wasn't enough. What kind of man does that?" Delphine's face remained slack, peaceful. The machines answered for her, beep, beep, beep. The mathematics of a heart trying to remember its purpose. Russell stayed until security came to clear the floor. He walked out of the hospital into the parking lot, found his car, a stupid expensive thing that meant nothing now, and sat in the driver's seat with the door open. The hospital glowed behind him, windows lit up like a vertical city. Somewhere in those lights, Julia was feeding babies, changing them, learning their cries and what each one meant, doing everything alone because he'd made sure she had no choice. He sat there for 6 hours. The parking lot emptied around him. The night shift arrived. The lights in some windows went dark while others blazed to life. The emergency entrance saw its parade of ambulances and panic and love, arriving too late or just in time. Russell sat in his car and couldn't make himself leave, couldn't make himself stay, couldn't make himself do anything but breathe and remember and calculate the exact weight of his failures. Dawn started breaking somewhere to the east. The sky went from black to grey, to that particular shade of blue that promises either hope or just another day, depending on what you're looking for. Russell finally closed his car door, put his key in the ignition. His hands were shaking so badly he dropped the keys twice before managing to start the engine. He drove out of the parking lot and onto streets that were just beginning to wake up. Drove past coffee shops opening their doors and joggers starting their routines and newspaper delivery trucks making their rounds. Drove through a city that was continuing like nothing had changed, but everything had changed. Russell Phoenix had 3 daughters whose first breaths he hadn't witnessed. 3 daughters he had no right to claim. 3 daughters who existed because of him and despite him in equal measure. He drove home to his empty penthouse and stood in the shower until the water ran cold, trying to wash away the knowledge that wouldn't leave him. He stood dripping on expensive tile in an expensive bathroom, in an expensive apartment that meant absolutely nothing. His phone sat on the marble counter, silent now. He picked it up and opened the browser, typed Mercy General Hospital Maternity Ward into the search bar. His finger hovered over the call button. He didn't press it. Instead, he set the phone down, walked to his bedroom, and lay on top of the covers, fully dressed. Stared at the ceiling, watched the sun rise through his floor-to-ceiling windows and paint his failures in shades of gold. Somewhere across the city, Julia Berry held 3 babies and didn't know he knew, didn't know he'd seen her. Didn't know he was lying here trying to figure out how to deserve even one moment of their lives. The sun climbed higher. The day began. Russell didn't move. His phone buzzed one more time. A reminder about something he was supposed to do, someone he was supposed to meet, some obligation that belonged to a version of him that no longer existed. He closed his eyes and saw 3 bassinets. Saw Julia's face as she kissed 3 foreheads. Saw the entire future he'd destroyed before it even began. Chapter 2. The Architecture of Ruins. Russell didn't sleep. Sleep required peace or exhaustion, and he had neither, only the grinding loop of memory playing behind his eyes. He returned to the hospital before 7. His mother was still unconscious, still breathing through machines. The surgeon had said recovery would take days. Russell pulled the chair close to her bed. "I need to tell you something," he said to her closed eyes. "I need to say it out loud because if I don't, I think it'll kill me." The machines beeped their steady response. Outside the window, the city went about its business. "Do you remember when I first brought Julia home?" Russell's voice cracked. "You opened the door, and she was so nervous she couldn't stop talking. Told you about her grandmother who raised her, about the violin, about how she'd been alone for so long." He wiped his eyes. "You pulled her into a hug before she'd even finished introducing herself. Said, 'Any girl who makes my boy smile like that doesn't need to be nervous in this house.' She cried right there in the doorway. You just held her and told her she was family now." The memory felt like swallowing glass. "We got married in your backyard," Russell continued. "We couldn't afford a real venue. Julia wore a white dress from a consignment shop and carried flowers from your garden. When I saw her walking toward me, Mom, I thought my heart would stop. She looked at me like I was worth something, like I was good." He pressed his hands against his eyes. "We lived in that apartment on Riverside. Julia taught violin lessons to kids after school, played weddings on weekends, worked at the diner nights a week, never complained. She'd come home exhausted, blisters on her fingers from playing, and she'd still ask about my day. Still want to hear about my designs." The machines kept their rhythm, beep, beep, beep. "I was trying to build something," Russell said. "You remember? The prototype. I was so sure it would work, but no one would listen. I pitched to so many people who looked at me like I was wasting their time." He shifted in the chair. "Julia believed anyway. When I wanted to quit, she wouldn't let me. She said, 'You're going to change things, Russell.' I know you are." She sold her grandmother's china set to buy me materials. I had to rice and canned vegetables so I could have protein. She sacrificed everything while I chased this dream." Russell stood, started pacing. "And then it worked. The prototype tested perfectly. I got funding. Everything exploded. Suddenly I was going to galas and dinners and meetings with important people. And Julia was still Julia, still teaching kids, still wearing thrift store clothes, still coming home tired. The city below looked cold and grey. People started making comments," Russell said quietly. "Your wife didn't come to the dinner. Julia seems uncomfortable at these events. Little things. Made me start seeing her through different eyes." Russell turned back to his mother. "I started feeling ashamed of the woman who'd given me everything. I'd see her at parties, trying to make conversation with people who looked right through her, and instead of being angry at them, I was embarrassed by her." His voice broke. "There was a conference. I got set up for dinner, and afterward we went to the hotel bar. There was a woman there. I don't even remember her name, Mom. I destroyed my marriage for a woman whose name I don't remember." He sank back into the chair. "I slept with her. Betrayed everything Julia and I had built. And the worst part, I felt powerful doing it, like I was finally the kind of man who could have affairs and expensive suits and a life that didn't smell like thrift stores and sacrifice." The confession hung in the air like smoke. "I came home and told her." "I don't know why. Maybe I wanted her to leave me so I wouldn't have to be the villain. Maybe I just wanted to hurt her because I'd already hurt myself. I said, 'Julia, I slept with someone else and I think we should get divorced.' Just like that. Cold. And do you know what she did? She just looked at me, didn't cry, didn't scream. Just looked at me for a long time, then nodded and said, 'Okay.'" Russell's shoulders shook. "That was it. Okay." She moved out that week. The divorce papers came soon after. She signed everything, didn't fight for anything. Just signed and left. He wiped his eyes. "I thought I'd feel free, but all I felt was empty. like I'd taken everything good in my life and set it on fire just to watch it burn. The machines kept their steady count. The sun climbed higher in the sky. "And now I know," Russell whispered. "She was pregnant when I did that to her, carrying our daughters when I said I wanted a divorce, growing 3 lives inside her body while I was destroying the life we'd built together." He laid his head on the edge of her bed. "What do I do, Mom? How do I fix this?" Delphine didn't answer. The machines answered instead. Beep, beep, beep. Russell stayed until a nurse came to check vitals, walked out into the hallway in a daze. He found himself at the information desk. "Maternity ward," he said. "There was a woman, Julia Berry. She had triplets. 3 girls. The volunteer smiled warmly. "Oh, yes. Wren, Sparrow, and Lark. Bird names for all 3. The mother said her grandmother was a bird expert." Russell gripped the edge of the desk. "Bird names," he repeated. "Yes. Isn't that lovely?" "No," Russell said. "I'm nobody." He walked away, found himself in front of room 447 again, but the door was closed now and the blinds were drawn. He stood there for minutes, hand raised to knock before forcing himself to leave. Bird names. Julia had once told him that if they ever had daughters, she'd name them after birds. "So they'll always know how to fly," she'd said. "So they'll never feel trapped." She'd named their daughters to fly away from him, away from the cage he'd built with his selfishness and shame. Russell walked out of the hospital into cold morning air, got in his car and sat there, hands on the steering wheel, going nowhere. Finally he drove. No destination, just movement, because staying still meant thinking. He ended up at their old apartment on Riverside. The building looked the same, still shabby, still home to people scraping by. He sat across the street and stared at the 3rd-floor window where they'd lived. That window had been their world once. Behind that glass, Julia had made dinner on a hot plate. Behind that glass, they danced to music from a radio that only got 3 stations. Behind that glass, they talked about futures that felt impossible and perfect. Russell put his head on the steering wheel and finally let himself break. Chapter 3. The Weight of Silence. Delphine woke on the 3rd day. Russell was there when her eyes opened. When she tried to speak around the breathing tube, the nurses came quickly, checked monitors, adjusted things. When they removed the tube, the first thing she said was, "Your face looks like death." "What happened?" Russell had rehearsed 100 ways to tell her. "I saw Julia. She had 3 babies, triplets. They're mine, Mom, and she never told me." Delphine closed her eyes. "I know." The room tilted. "What?" Julia told me. "The day before she signed the divorce papers. She was 6 weeks pregnant. She looked so broken standing in my doorway. Why didn't you tell me?" Because she begged me not to," Delphine said simply. "She told me everything. How she realized if she told you, you'd stay out of obligation, not love. She wouldn't bring them into a home where their father resented their existence. She was protecting me. After what I did, she was protecting those children," Delphine corrected. "She said she loved you too much to watch you hate yourself for staying. I need to see her." "You need to think," Delphine interrupted. "What are you going to do? Storm in and demand your rights? Throw money at her? She just gave birth to 3 children alone. Your guilt is not her emergency." Russell sank into the chair. "So I do nothing?" "Figure out what kind of man you want those 3 girls to know," Delphine said. "Then maybe you'll be ready to face Julia. You broke something precious. You have to earn the right to even hold the pieces." Russell drove home in a fog. Realized he didn't know Julia's address, didn't know her phone number, didn't know anything except that somewhere she was alone with 3 babies. He hired a private investigator, then cancelled before the man responded. He couldn't violate Julia that way. A hospital bill arrived at his penthouse. Julia's bill, over $100,000. The address listed a women's shelter. He drove there, parked across the street. The building was grey and institutional, with bars on the windows. He watched for days. On the 8th day, he saw her. Julia walked out pushing a triple stroller that looked barely functional. She was thinner, exhausted, moving like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. She looked like she'd been through war. Russell's hand was on the door handle, but he watched her struggle down the steps, thanked the security guard, and walk away. He drove in the opposite direction. That night, he paid her hospital bill anonymously. 2 days later, a cashier's check for the full amount arrived. No note, just his money returned. Julia didn't want his guilt money, didn't want anything from him. He tried anyway. Anonymous apartment listings, baby supplies, scholarship applications. Everything got rejected or returned. Russell started therapy. Dr. Calloway Reese listened to his story, then said, "What do you want from me?" "I want to know how to fix this." "You can't fix destroying someone's trust," Dr. Reese said flatly. "Forgiveness isn't something you earn. It's a gift she's not obligated to give. Figure out what kind of man you actually are. Then decide if that man is someone those 3 girls deserve to know." Russell came back every week. Meanwhile, Julia stayed in the shelter, worked night shifts, slept 3 hours, ate whatever the shelter provided. Russell drove by, watched from a distance, never approached. One morning he saw Temperance arrive, saw Julia cry on the front steps while Temperance held her. Russell gripped his steering wheel and stayed in the car. 3 weeks later, the hospital called. His mother was being discharged. He brought her home, hired nurses, spent nights telling her everything he was learning about himself. "I was ashamed of being poor," he said. "I made Julia pay for my shame. I couldn't stand that she'd seen me at my lowest." "Maybe it's too late for you and Julia," Delphine said. "But those 3 babies deserve a father. Not the one you were, but the one you could become." 2 days later, a letter arrived. Memorial service instructions for Delphine Phoenix, specifying Julia Berry should be invited. "You planned your funeral to force us together?" Russell asked. "I planned for contingencies," Delphine said. "Now get me some water." 3 nights later, Russell woke to machines screaming. Nurses running, second massive heart attack. He rode in the ambulance, begging her to stay. She died at 4 in the morning, quiet, peaceful, gone. The funeral was scheduled for Saturday. Russell waited for Julia's response. It came Thursday. A single line, "I'll be there." "For Delphine, not for you." Chapter 4. The Price of Cowardice. Julia arrived at the funeral home alone. No babies, no Temperance, just her, wearing a black dress that looked borrowed and shoes that had seen too many miles. She walked through the doors at exactly 10 in the morning. The service started at 10:30 and went directly to the closed casket. Russell watched from across the room. He'd arrived at 8 to make sure everything was perfect. Had spent 2 hours arranging chairs and checking flower placements and doing anything to avoid thinking about what would happen when Julia walked in. Now she was here, and he couldn't breathe. She stood in front of Delphine's casket for a long time. Then she opened her purse and pulled something out. A violin bow, old worn, the horsehair frayed. She placed it gently on top of the casket, her hand lingering there for a moment. "Delphine bought me my first professional bow," Julia said without turning around. Russell realized she knew he was watching. "I was 16, living with my grandmother in that apartment above the music store. I'd been playing on a student bow for years, saving up for a real one. Delphine came into the store one day, heard me playing, and bought the bow right there. $800. Just handed it to me and said, 'You can't make music like that with inadequate tools.'" She finally turned to face him. Her eyes were dry but devastated. "That bow carried me through every important performance of my life. My conservatory audition, my first professional symphony, my wedding." Russell's throat closed. "Julia, don't," she said quietly. "Don't say anything. I came because I loved your mother. She was the only mother I ever had after my grandmother died. She was kind to me when I had no one. And when you destroyed our marriage, she didn't stop loving me, even when she probably should have to make things easier on you." She walked past him toward the door. "The babies are with Temperance. I need to get back before the afternoon feeding. I can't stay for the service." "Please," Russell said. "Just Please wait. Julia stopped. Didn't turn around. For what? So you can apologize again? So you can explain why you're suddenly interested in being a father? I don't have time for your guilt, Russell. I have 3 infants who need me every 2 hours. I have a job that barely pays for formula. I have exactly 0 energy for whatever this is. I paid your hospital bill, Russell said. The words came out desperate and wrong. Julia laughed. Actually laughed. It sounded like breaking glass. I know. I sent it back. Did you really think I wouldn't know? That you could just throw money at this and make yourself feel better? I was trying to help. You were trying to buy absolution, Julia interrupted, finally turning to face him. And I'm not selling. Keep your money. Keep your guilt. Keep whatever fantasy you've built where you get to play hero in this story. She started walking again. Russell followed. They're mine, aren't they? The babies. They're my daughters. Julia stopped in the parking lot. The morning sun was too bright, too cheerful for this conversation. Biologically. Yes, in any way that matters? No, did I have rights? Rights. But Julia's voice went sharp. You want to talk about rights? You have the right to DNA. That's it. You weren't there when I found out I was pregnant. You weren't there when I worked, until I collapsed because I had no choice. You weren't there when I spent 8 weeks on bed rest in a hospital alone, praying they'd survive. You weren't there when they cut them out of me, and I nearly bled to death on that table. You weren't there for their first breath, their first cry, any of the first anything. So don't stand there and talk to me about rights. I didn't know because I didn't tell you, Julia said. And I didn't tell you because you'd made it very clear that I was an embarrassment, that our marriage was something you needed to escape, that the life we'd built was something to be ashamed of. So I made a choice. I chose to protect my daughters from growing up watching their father resent their existence. Russell felt like he was drowning. I wouldn't have. Yes, you would have, Julia said flatly. Maybe not consciously, maybe not on purpose. But every time you looked at them, you'd have seen the trap that caught you, the obligation that forced you to stay with the woman you were too ashamed to keep. They'd have felt that, Russell. Children always feel that. So I took that choice away from you. A car pulled into the parking lot. Other mourners arriving. Julia glanced at them, then back at Russell. I need to go. Can I see them? The question came out broken. Please, just once. I just want to see them. Julia studied his face for a long moment. Why, so you can tell yourself you tried? So you can check a box that says you attempted to be a father? Because they're my daughters, Russell said. And I know I have no right to them. I know I destroyed everything. But they exist, Julia. They're real. And I need to see them. I need to know they're okay. They're fine, Julia said coldly. They have a mother who would die for them. That's more than enough. She walked to her car. It was old, maybe 15 years, with a dent in the driver's side and a crack across the windshield. She opened the door, then paused. Your mother made me promise something before she went into surgery. She made me promise that if anything happened to her, I'd give you a chance. One chance. Not because you deserve it, but because she believed you could become someone who did. Julia got in the car. I don't know if I can keep that promise, but I'm going to try for her, not for you. She started the engine. Russell stood there helplessly. What do I need to do? Figure out who you actually are, Julia said through the open window. Not the man who betrayed me. Not the man drowning in guilt. The real you underneath all the performance. Then maybe we'll talk. Maybe. She drove away, leaving Russell standing in the parking lot as other cars pulled in around him. People getting out dressed in black, coming to mourn his mother. People who would expect him to deliver a eulogy, to shake hands, to accept condolences. Russell walked back inside. The funeral home staff had everything ready. The flowers were perfect. The chairs were arranged. The program he'd written listed all of Delphine's accomplishments, all the people who'd loved her. The bow still rested on top of the casket. People started arriving. Delphine's friends from church, neighbors from the old house, former colleagues. They hugged Russell and told him how sorry they were and shared memories of his mother. Russell stood there and nodded and thanked them and felt completely empty. When it was time for the service to begin, everyone took their seats. Russell walked to the front, looked out at 50 people who were waiting for him to say something meaningful about loss and love and the woman who'd raised him. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The silence stretched. People shifted uncomfortably. Russell looked down at the notes he'd prepared. All the right words were there. All the appropriate sentiments about life and death and cherishing memories. My mother, he finally said, believed people could change. She believed it even when the evidence suggested otherwise. She believed it about me even after I gave her every reason not to. He paused, took a breath. I destroyed something precious because I was ashamed of being loved by someone who'd seen me at my worst. My mother tried to teach me that being seen, being truly known was a gift. But I didn't understand that until it was too late. Until I'd thrown away everything that mattered. Someone in the back coughed. Russell kept going. She kept loving me anyway, even when I didn't deserve it. Even when loving me probably hurt. She kept believing I could become someone worth believing in. His voice cracked. I don't know if I can, but I'm going to try, because that's what she would have wanted. For me to actually try instead of just talking about trying. He couldn't say anything else. Just stood there looking at his mother's casket with a violin bow on top and felt the weight of every mistake he'd ever made pressing down on his shoulders. Someone started clapping, then another person, then the whole room. Russell didn't understand why. He'd barely said anything, had fumbled through the worst eulogy in history, but they were clapping anyway. For his honesty, maybe, or for Delphine, who'd raised a son who could still, somehow, manage to be honest when it mattered. The rest of the service passed in a blur. People spoke. They sang hymns. They shared memories. Russell stood and sat when prompted and felt like he was watching himself from very far away. Afterward, in the parking lot, he saw Julia's car, still there. She was sitting in the driver's seat, engine off, watching him through the windshield. Russell walked over slowly. She rolled down the window. That was the worst eulogy I've ever heard, she said. And also the most honest. I don't know how to do this, Russell admitted. Any of this. Being a father. Facing you. Becoming someone different. I don't have a plan or a strategy or any idea what I'm doing. Julia looked at him for a long time. Your mother told me something once. She said, the difference between a good man and a bad man isn't whether he makes mistakes. It's whether he's willing to face what those mistakes cost. She started her engine. The car sputtered, coughed, caught. You want a chance? Fine, one chance. But it's on my terms. You don't get to decide how this goes. You don't get to show up with money or grand gestures or explanations. You show up when I say. You do what I say. You accept whatever scraps I'm willing to give you. And if you miss even once, if you disappoint me even once, you're done forever. Understand? Russell nodded. I understand. Come to my address on Saturday morning. 10 sharp, not 9:59. Not 10:01. 10. She handed him a piece of paper with an address written on it. And Russell, don't bring anything. No gifts, no money, no apologies. Just you. She drove away. The car backfired as it left the parking lot. Russell stood there holding the piece of paper like it was a life raft. One chance. Chapter 5, 6 words. Russell spent the week in sustained panic. He bought books about infants, watched videos about holding babies, feeding them, changing diapers, took notes like he was studying for the most important exam of his life. Dr. Reese said, You know this isn't a test you can study for, right? I have to do this perfectly, Russell said. I can't mess this up. You're going to mess it up, Dr. Reese said calmly. Multiple times. That's parenting. The question is whether you'll keep trying after you fail. Russell didn't sleep Friday night. Saturday morning, he stood in front of his closet trying to decide what to wear. Everything screamed money. He settled on jeans and a plain shirt. No watch, no jewelry. The address led him to a neighborhood he didn't recognize. Buildings that needed paint and repair. Cars that ran on hope. Julia's apartment was on the second floor of a building that looked like it should have been condemned. He climbed the exterior stairs, concrete cracked with a wobbling railing. He knocked at exactly 10. Julia opened it immediately. Come in, quietly. They're all sleeping. The apartment was tiny. One room serving as bedroom, living room, and kitchen. A bathroom, visible through a partially open door. 3 cribs crammed against one wall. Laundry in the corner. Dishes in the sink. The smell of formula and exhaustion. This was where his daughters lived. Sit, Julia said, pointing to a chair at a table that seated 2. She sat across from him. Between them, 3 cribs holding 3 sleeping infants. Russell's throat closed. He could see them now. Really see them. 3 tiny humans, each wrapped in mismatched blankets. One had his nose. Another had his mouth. The third had his hands. Their names are Wren, Sparrow, and Lark, Julia said quietly. Wren is oldest by 2 minutes. Sparrow was smallest. They worried about her at first. Lark was last. She got stuck during delivery. They had to— Julia stopped. They got her out. She's fine now. Russell couldn't speak. Couldn't do anything but stare at 3 cribs. You can look at them, Julia said. Don't touch. Just look. Russell stood carefully. Walked to the first crib, Wren, bigger than the other 2. Dark hair like Julia's, his nose. She made small noises in her sleep. Second crib, Sparrow, smaller, delicate. A small tube ran to her nose. Oxygen. Third crib, Lark. She slept with her arms above her head, hands clenched into fists. She had Julia's mouth, his eyebrows. A small scar on her shoulder. They're beautiful, Russell whispered. They're mine, Julia said from behind him. Not yours, mine. I've earned them. You're here because I'm allowing it. Because your mother asked me to. Russell turned to face her. I understand. Do you? Julia asked. I've been doing this alone for months. I've learned how to feed 3 babies at once, change 3 diapers in under 10 minutes, survive on 2 hours of sleep. I've done all of that while you were living in your penthouse, feeling sorry for yourself. Yes, Russell said. I understand. I don't think you do, Julia said. You want to be a father. It's not going to be convenient. It's not going to fit into your schedule or make you feel good about yourself. She stood, walked to the cribs. I don't trust you at all. I think you're going to try for a few weeks, decide it's too hard, and disappear. And I'm letting you do it anyway because Delphine asked me to. So this is your one chance. Your only chance. Don't waste it. I won't, Russell said. Here are the rules. 1 hour per week. Saturday mornings. 10 to 11. You come here. You don't bring anything. No gifts, no money, no apologies. You interact with the babies under my supervision. You leave when I tell you. You miss 1 week, you're done forever. Understood? Understood, Russell said. Your hour starts now. Russell stood there. Julia waited. After a moment, she said, I'm not going to tell you what to do. Figure it out. One of the babies started crying. Wren. She went from sleeping to screaming in seconds. Russell looked at Julia. Julia looked back, expressionless. She's hungry, Julia said. Bottles are in the kitchen. Figure it out. Russell found bottles in the fridge. They were cold. Do I warm it? Do you think babies drink cold milk? Russell found a pot, filled it with water, set it on the hot plate. Put the bottle in, waited. Wren screamed louder. The water heated slowly. Russell tested the bottle. Too cold. Waited. Tested again. Still cold. Wren was going hoarse. Finally warm. Russell took it to the crib, picked Wren up carefully. Tried to give her the bottle. She turned away. Screamed louder. Russell tried again. She knocked the bottle from his hand. It fell, milk spilling. Clean that up, Julia said. There's another bottle in the fridge. Russell put Wren back. She screamed harder and cleaned up. Got another bottle. Started heating again. His hands were shaking. Wren's cries had woken Sparrow. The second bottle took forever. Both babies screaming. Finally ready. Russell picked up Wren, positioned her differently, offered the bottle. She took it. Finally, Russell exhaled in relief. She's eating too fast, Julia said. You have to burp her halfway through. Russell had no idea how. He tried patting her back. Wren choked, spit up, started screaming again. The bottle fell. Sparrow's crying intensified. Now Lark was waking. 3 babies crying. Russell stood holding a screaming infant with no idea what to do. Your hour's almost up, Julia said. She stood, took Wren from him. Within seconds, the baby calmed. Julia fed her efficiently, burped her, settled her. Then she did the same with Sparrow and Lark. 3 babies. All fed and content in 15 minutes. Russell stood covered in spit-up, exhausted, defeated. "I don't know how you do this." "Practice," Julia said, "and necessity. You learn fast when there's no one else." She put the last baby down. "Your hour's up. Leave." Russell walked to the door, turned back. "Julia, save it," she said. "See you next Saturday. 10 sharp." He left, walked down the stairs to his car, sat in the driver's seat and put his head on the steering wheel. He'd failed. 1 baby, 1 hour. Complete disaster. But Julia had said, "See you next Saturday." Another chance. Russell drove home and immediately started researching. Bought a doll, practiced for hours, watched videos until his eyes burned. Week 2. Russell arrived at 10, having barely slept. He'd practiced. He'd watched videos. He was ready. Julia opened the door. "Come in." Same setup. 3 cribs, 3 babies. Julia at the table. "Your hour starts now." Russell waited. All 3 babies were awake but quiet. He approached the cribs. "Can I hold one?" "If you think you can manage it." Russell picked up Lark carefully. She was so light. He supported her head properly. She looked up at him with dark eyes and made a small noise. "Talk to her," Julia said. "Olvidicatutius. Babies need to hear voices." "Hi, Lark, I'm your—" He stopped. "I'm Russell, and I'm sorry I haven't been here. But I'm here now, and I'm going to try to be better." Lark blinked at him, then vomited all over his shirt. Russell froze. Lark started crying. He looked at Julia helplessly. "Did I do something wrong?" "She has reflux," Julia said. "Happens sometimes. Clean yourself up, bathroom." Russell cleaned up, changed Lark's clothes, fumbled through it but managed. His hour wasn't half over, and he was already exhausted. "Try feeding Sparrow," Julia said. Russell went through the process, heating the bottle, picking her up, positioning her. This time slightly better. Sparrow ate slowly. He remembered to burp her. She spit up anyway, but less. "Better," Julia said. "Not praise exactly, but not criticism either." When his hour was up, Russell left feeling marginally less defeated. Week 3. Week 4, week 5. Each Saturday he got slightly better. Figured out Wren needed to be held tighter. Sparrow needed patience. Lark needed constant movement. Julia never praised him. Never offered help unless the babies were in distress. Just watched and said, "Your hour's up." Week 8. Russell arrived to find Julia looking worse than usual. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Your hour starts now," she said. Russell went through his routine. He was competent now, if not confident. When his hour ended, he hesitated. "Julia, are you eating enough?" "Not your concern. Leave." Russell left, worried. She looked like she was barely holding on. Week 12. Russell arrived to find all 3 babies asleep. Julia sat at the table looking dead on her feet. "Come in," she said quietly. The apartment was messier than usual. Dishes piled up, laundry everywhere. The babies slept. Julia sat with her head in her hands. Russell stood there. "Sit down," he said quietly. "This is my apartment," Julia said. "You don't give orders." "Then I'm asking, please." Julia looked up. Her eyes were red. "Why are you still coming? What do you get out of this?" "I'm trying to be their father," Russell said. "You can't be their father in 1 hour a week," Julia said. "That's not real." "It's what you're letting me have," Russell said. "So it's what I'm taking." Julia looked at him for a long moment, then said, "All 3 fell asleep at the same time." "That's been happening more. They're syncing their schedules." It was the first personal thing she'd told him. "That's good," Russell said. "Must make it easier." "A little," Julia admitted. They sat in silence. The babies slept. "Your mother would be disappointed in me," Julia said. "She asked me to give you a chance, and I've been making it as hard as possible." "She'd understand," Russell said. Julia smiled slightly. The first real smile he'd seen. "She was proud of you." "Before everything fell apart. She used to tell me stories about when you were little, how determined you were." "I forgot how to do that," Russell said. "I got successful and forgot that the best parts of me came from having to struggle." "Is that what I was to you?" Julia asked. "A reminder of struggle?" Russell met her eyes. Yes, and I will hate myself for that until the day I die. The honesty hung between them. Julia looked away. Your hour's up, she said, but her voice was quieter. Russell stood. Thank you for these hours. I know I don't deserve them. You don't, Julia agreed. But your mother asked me to. Russell left. For the first time since this started, he felt like maybe there was a path forward. Not to forgiveness, not to redemption, but to being present. It wasn't much, but it was more than he'd had before. Chapter 6. The Terms of Engagement, Week 13. Russell arrived at 10 sharp to find a note taped to Julia's door. In hospital. Don't come in. His heart stopped. He knocked anyway, no answer. He called through the door, nothing. He stood there for 10 minutes, panic rising, before Temperance appeared on the stairs. She collapsed yesterday, Temperance said without preamble. Passed out while feeding the babies. I took her to the hospital. They're keeping her for observation. The girls are with me, Temperance interrupted. And before you ask, no, you can't see them. Julia's instructions were very clear. If anything happened to her, I'm in charge, not you. Russell leaned against the wall. Is she okay? Severe exhaustion, malnutrition, dehydration. She's been skipping meals to make formula money stretch further. Temperance crossed her arms. You've been coming here for 3 months. Did you not notice she was starving herself? Russell had noticed. He'd asked. Julia had shut him down. What hospital? I'm not telling you that, Temperance said. She doesn't want to see you. Please, Russell said. I need to know she's okay. Temperance studied him. She's terrified, she finally said. She's terrified that if she takes any help from you, if she accepts anything at all, you'll use it as leverage. That you'll claim she's an unfit mother, or that you deserve more custody because you've been supporting her. So she'd rather starve than give you ammunition. The words hit like physical blows. I would never. Wouldn't you? Temperance asked. Because from where Julia's standing, you're the man who betrayed her and destroyed her entire life. Why would she trust that you wouldn't do it again? Russell had no answer. Temperance shook her head. She'll be out in a few days. Stay away until she contacts you. Those are her rules. She left. Russell stood outside Julia's apartment for a long time. Finally went home. Spent the next 4 days unable to think about anything else. Called the hospital and was told they couldn't release patient information. Tried to hire a lawyer and stopped himself. That would only prove Julia right. On day 5, a text arrived from an unknown number. I'm home. Come Saturday. Same time. Saturday, Russell arrived at 10 to find Julia looking almost translucent. She'd lost weight she didn't have to lose. Dark circles under her eyes. But she was home. The babies were back in their cribs. Everything looked normal, except for how clearly nothing was normal. Sit, Julia said. Her voice was tired but steady. Russell sat. Are you okay? The babies are fine, Julia said, not answering his actual question. Temperance took good care of them. They barely noticed I was gone. That's not what I asked. Julia looked at him directly. The hospital wants me to accept state aid. Food assistance, housing vouchers, childcare subsidies. They said if I don't, they'll call child services. That I'm neglecting my own health, and that makes me a risk to the girls. Russell's stomach dropped. Are you going to? Accept state aid? Julia laughed without humor. What choice do I have? I can either let the government help me or let you help me. And at least the government doesn't come with emotional baggage. I wasn't offering money, Russell said carefully. You were thinking it, Julia said. I could see it on your face. The man who can solve everything with his wallet trying to figure out how to make a deposit I'd actually accept. She wasn't wrong. Russell had been thinking exactly that. What do you want from me, then? What can I actually do that won't make this worse? Julia was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, the hospital gave me an ultimatum. I need help, real help, not money, not anonymous donations, actual physical help with the babies. If I can't demonstrate adequate support within 2 weeks, they'll require supervised visits with a social worker. And if I can't manage that, she stopped, swallowed, they'll place the girls temporarily with foster care while I recover. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. They can't do that, Russell said. You're their mother. You love them. Love doesn't keep babies alive, Julia said flatly. Food does, sleep does, adequate care does, and I'm failing at all of those. So either I accept help or I lose them. Those are my options. Russell understood what she wasn't saying. You want me to help. I don't want anything from you, Julia corrected. But I need something. And since the only other person I have is Temperance, and she's got her own family to care for, that leaves you, unless you've got better things to do. There's nothing better I could possibly do, Russell said immediately. Then here's how this works, Julia said. You come 3 times a week, 2 hours each visit. Morning times, 6 to 8 before you go to work. You help with morning routines, bottles, diapers, putting them down for first nap. Then you leave. No extended visits, no bonding time. You're here to provide practical help, not to play father. Okay, Russell said. And you don't bring anything, Julia continued. No gifts, no supplies, no groceries that you just happen to buy too much of. You show up, you help with the babies, you leave. That's it. Okay, Russell said again. And if you miss once, if you're late even once, the deal is off and you go back to 1 hour on Saturdays. Or nothing if I decide you're more trouble than you're worth. I understand, Russell said. Julia looked at him suspiciously. You're agreeing too easily. Because I'm grateful you're even considering this, Russell said honestly. Because I know what it costs you to ask me for help. Because I'll take any amount of time with my daughters that you're willing to give me. Julia's jaw tightened. Don't make this about gratitude or fatherhood or any of that. This is about survival. I'm using you as free labor because I have no other choice. That's all this is. Okay, Russell said. Stop saying okay, Julia snapped. Stop being so agreeable. Argue with me. Tell me you deserve more. Tell me you have rights. Give me a reason to send you away. Russell met her eyes. I'm not going to fight with you. You're drowning, and I'm part of the reason why. If you're giving me a chance to help keep you afloat, I'm taking it. On whatever terms you set. Julia looked away. I don't trust you. I know. I think you're going to use this to try to take them from me, to build some case that I'm unfit and you're the better option. I won't, Russell said. I swear to you I won't. Your promises don't mean anything to me, Julia said. You promised to love me. You promised forever. You promised a lot of things, and then you destroyed them all. So your swears are worthless. Then judge me by my actions, Russell said. Watch what I do, and if I ever, even once, give you reason to think I'm trying to take them from you, end this immediately. I'll walk away. I'll sign away my rights. Whatever you want, Julia studied him. Why? Why would you agree to that? Because they need you, Russell said simply. They need their mother healthy and alive and present. And if helping you means I stay in the background forever, that's fine, as long as they have you. Something shifted in Julia's expression. Not trust, but maybe the beginning of belief. Starting Monday, she said. 6 sharp. Don't be late. Monday morning, Russell woke at 4:30. Drove across the city in the dark. Arrived at Julia's building at 5:55. Waited in his car until exactly 6, then climbed the stairs. Julia opened the door before he could knock. She looked like she hadn't slept. They've been up since 4, she said. Welcome to my world. The apartment was chaos. All 3 babies crying. Julia moving between them mechanically, face slack with exhaustion. Wren needs a bottle. Sparrow needs changed. Lark just needs to be held. Pick one. Russell took Lark. She was screaming, face red, tiny fists waving. He held her the way he'd practiced, supporting her head, keeping her secure. Started walking, swaying, the way the book said to do. Lark kept crying. Russell kept swaying. Julia dealt with Wren and Sparrow with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Russell just focused on Lark, on keeping her safe, on being there. After 10 minutes, Lark's cries diminished to whimpers. After 15, she quieted. After 20, she was asleep against his chest. Russell stood very still, afraid to move and wake her. Julia finished with the other 2, looked over, and saw Lark sleeping. Put her in the crib, she said. Slowly, Russell managed it. Lark stayed asleep. Julia looked at him with something that might have been respect. Not bad. The 2 hours passed in a blur of bottles and diapers and crying and brief moments of quiet. When 8 o'clock arrived, all 3 babies were down for their morning nap. The apartment was, not clean, but functional. Julia sat at the table looking dead on her feet. "Go back to sleep," Russell said. "I'll let myself out." "You did okay," Julia said. It was the closest thing to praise she'd ever given him. "I'll be back Wednesday," Russell said. Same time. He left. Drove to his job at the high school where he taught physics. Taught classes in the days. Came home, slept, woke up Tuesday and did it all again. Wednesday, same routine. Russell showed up at 6. Helped for 2 hours. Left. Julia barely spoke to him, but she didn't send him away either. Friday, same thing. By the end of that week, Russell had logged 6 hours with his daughters. 6 hours of being useful, of being present, of being something other than the man who destroyed everything. The following week, same schedule. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 to 8. Russell learned that Wren needed to be fed first, or she'd wake the others with her screaming. That Sparrow's oxygen tube needed checking every morning. That Lark preferred being changed on the left side of the table because the light was better there. Julia watched him figure these things out. Didn't offer advice unless he was about to do something actually wrong. Just watched him learn through trial and error and exhaustion. Week 3 of the new schedule. Russell arrived Monday morning to find Julia asleep in the chair, all 3 babies awake and fussing in their cribs. He let himself in quietly. She'd given him a key the week before, wordlessly, just pressed it into his hand, and got to work. Bottles, diapers, holding Lark while he fed Wren with his other hand, changing Sparrow one-handed while Lark slept on his shoulder. He'd gotten efficient, not as fast as Julia, but competent. When Julia woke at 7:30, all 3 babies were fed and changed and quietly playing in their cribs. Russell was washing bottles in the sink. "You let me sleep," Julia said. Her voice was strange. "You needed it," Russell said. "I've never slept through their morning routine before," Julia said. "Not once since they were born." "You were exhausted," Russell said. "And they were fine. I managed." Julia stood, walked to the cribs, checked each baby carefully, like she didn't quite believe they were okay. They were all content. No crying, no distress. She turned to look at Russell with an expression he couldn't read. "Thank you," she said quietly. They were the first real thanks she'd given him. Russell nodded, afraid to speak and ruin the moment. "You can stay until 9 today," Julia said. "If you want, since you were here early." It was a gift, an offering. Russell accepted it carefully. "I'd like that." They worked in silence for the extra hour. When Russell finally left at 9, Julia walked him to the door. "Same schedule next week," she said. "You're doing okay." It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't trust. But it was acknowledgement. It was Julia seeing him as something other than just the man who'd hurt her. It was a start. Chapter 7. The Education of Humility. Months passed. Russell settled into the routine. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 6 to 8 in the morning. He'd given up trying to keep track of time, of counting weeks or marking progress. He just showed up, did what needed doing, left when Julia said to leave. The babies grew, started recognizing him. Wren would stop crying when he picked her up. Sparrow smiled when she saw him. Actual smiles, not gas. Lark reached for him when he came through the door. Julia stayed distant. Polite, functional, but never warm. She'd thank him when he did something well, correct him when he messed up. But she never let her guard down, never gave him anything personal. Russell accepted it. This wasn't about him and Julia anymore. It was about 3 little girls who were learning to trust him 1 bottle at a time. The high school where he taught noticed his exhaustion. His principal called him in. "Russell, you're doing good work here, but you're falling asleep in department meetings." "Is everything okay at home?" My mother died," Russell said. It was true, if incomplete. "I'm still adjusting. Take some time if you need it," the principal said. "We can get a substitute." Russell shook his head. "I'm fine. I'll manage." He was barely managing. Between early mornings with the babies and full days teaching and his own life falling apart, Russell was running on fumes. But he didn't miss a single morning. Not once. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. 6 sharp. One Wednesday, Russell arrived to find Julia waiting at the door with an odd expression. "There's something I need to tell you," she said. Russell's stomach dropped. This was it. She was ending their arrangement. He'd known it was coming eventually. She'd decide he wasn't trustworthy or wasn't helping enough or was helping too much. His mind raced through responses, pleas, anything to make her reconsider. "The social worker came yesterday," Julia said. "Final check before they close my case. She saw the babies, saw the apartment, asked me about support systems. I told her about you." Russell waited, didn't breathe. "She asked if you were reliable, if you showed up consistently, if you were actually helping or just going through the motions." Julia paused. "I told her you haven't missed a single morning in 2 months, that you've never been late, that the babies are comfortable with you, that you've been—" She stopped, looked away. "That you've been dependable. Dependable." Coming from Julia, it meant everything. "She's closing the case?" Russell asked. "She's satisfied I have adequate support," Julia said. "Which means no more supervised visits, no more threat of foster care. They're leaving us alone." "That's good," Russell said. "That's really good. It's because of you," Julia said quietly. "If you hadn't shown up, if you'd missed even once, they would have taken them from me. So," she took a breath, "thank you. I'm saying it because it needs to be said. You kept my daughters with me." "Thank you." Russell nodded, not trusting his voice. Julia stepped back. "Come in." They just woke up. Inside, the routine continued as normal. Bottles, diapers, playing with the babies while Julia caught a few minutes of rest. But something had shifted. Some invisible wall had developed a crack. The next week, Julia started talking. Small things at first. "Ren rolled over yesterday. First time." Or Lark is teething. "That's why she's so fussy." Information she didn't have to share, but did anyway. Russell listened, responded, didn't push for more. Just accepted what Julia was willing to give. One Friday morning, Russell's phone rang during his time with the babies. He ignored it. It rang again and again. Finally, he checked. His school, emergency. He needed to come in immediately. A student had threatened violence, and Russell was the only teacher the kid would talk to. Russell looked at Julia. "I have to go. There's an emergency at school." Julia's face closed immediately. "Of course, go." "I'm sorry," Russell said. "I'll make it up." "Don't bother," Julia said coldly. "I should have known you'd find an excuse eventually." "It's not an excuse," Russell said desperately. "A student is in crisis. I'm the only one who can help. I'll come back tonight. I'll do extra time tomorrow." "Just go," Julia said. "We were fine before you showed up. We'll be fine when you leave." Russell left, torn apart. Dealt with the crisis at school. Talked the kid down, got him connected with counseling, stayed until the parents arrived. By the time he got back to Julia's apartment, it was afternoon. He knocked. No answer. He tried calling. She didn't pick up. Texted. No response. Came back that evening. The lights were off. Saturday morning, his usual 1-hour visit. He showed up at 10. Julia opened the door. "What do you want?" "My scheduled time," Russell said. 1 hour. "Like always." "You missed yesterday," Julia said. "Those were the rules. You miss once, you're done." "I didn't miss by choice," Russell said. "There was an emergency. A kid was threatening suicide. I had to be there." "There's always going to be something," Julia said. "Always a reason why the babies aren't the priority. Always some excuse why you can't show up. I won't put them through that. I won't let them learn to count on you just so you can disappoint them." "One emergency in 3 months," Russell said. "One, and I'm here now. I'm standing here asking for my time with my daughters. They're not your daughters," Julia said. "They're mine. You're just the man I let in occasionally out of pity." The words were designed to hurt, and they did. But Russell saw past them, saw the fear underneath. Julia was terrified that he'd abandon them, that he'd prove her right about him, that she'd been wrong to let him in at all. "I'm not leaving," Russell said quietly. "You can slam this door in my face. You can tell me I'm done, but I'll be here next Monday at 6 sharp. And the Monday after that, and every Monday until you physically prevent me from showing up. Because those girls deserve a father who doesn't quit when things get hard. And maybe I haven't earned that title yet, but I'm going to keep trying until I do. Julia stared at him. You really think showing up is enough? No, Russell said, but it's all I have. So it's what I'm giving, consistently, relentlessly, until you believe it or until I die trying. Julia's hand tightened on the door. If you break their hearts, then you'll never forgive me and I'll never forgive myself, Russell said. I know. I live with that knowledge every single day. But I'm still going to show up. Julia was quiet for a long moment. Then she stepped back. 1 hour. And don't ever make me feel like I was wrong to trust you again. Russell came in. The hour was tense, stilted, but he was there. He'd shown up after she'd tried to push him away. He'd fought to stay when leaving would have been easier. Monday morning, 6 sharp, Russell was at the door. Julia opened it without a word. Let him in. They worked in silence. At 8, as he was leaving, Julia said, the social worker also asked if you were on the birth certificates. Russell stopped. What did you tell her? That you weren't, Julia said. That I'd left you off because I wasn't sure if you'd stick around. Russell's chest ached. And now? Now I'm considering it, Julia said carefully. Not because you deserve it, but because they deserve to have it documented who their father is, in case something happens to me, in case they need medical history or... She stopped. It's practical, not emotional. Understand? I understand, Russell said. Whatever you decide is fine. I'm here either way. Julia nodded. We'll see. The weeks continued. The babies grew, started sitting up on their own, babbling. Wren was the loudest, always demanding attention. Sparrow was quieter, more observant. Lark was the climber. Even at 6 months she was trying to pull herself up on anything she could reach. Russell learned their personalities, learned that Wren needed to be fed first but put down for naps last. That Sparrow liked being read to, even though she couldn't understand the words. That Lark would only sleep if someone was touching her. He learned Julia's patterns too, how she'd get very quiet when she was overwhelmed, how she'd clean obsessively when she was anxious, how she'd sometimes just stare at the babies with an expression that was equal parts love and terror. One morning, Russell arrived to find Julia crying. Actually crying, sitting at the table with her face in her hands while all 3 babies screamed from their cribs. What happened? Russell asked, immediately going to the babies. Nothing, Julia said through tears. Everything. I don't know. They won't stop crying. I've fed them, changed them, held them, and they just won't stop. And I'm so tired. I'm so incredibly tired. And I don't know how to do this anymore. Russell got all 3 babies out of their cribs, somehow managed to arrange them on the couch with pillows as barriers. Sat between them, one hand on Sparrow, Lark on his lap, Wren leaning against his side. They quieted gradually, responding to his presence. When did you last eat? Russell asked Julia. I don't remember, Julia said. Yesterday, maybe? There's food in the cabinet, Russell said. Eat something. I've got them. You have to leave at 8, Julia said automatically. You have work. I'm calling in sick, Russell said. Eat something. Then sleep. I'll stay until you wake up. You can't. I can, Russell interrupted. And I am. For once in your life, Julia, let someone help you without fighting about it. Julia looked at him, at the 3 babies who were calm in his presence, at the offer of help that came with no strings attached. Okay, she whispered. Okay. She made herself eat, then went to lie down. Within minutes, she was asleep. Russell stayed on the couch with 3 babies and called the school to take a sick day. His first one all year. He stayed until 2 in the afternoon. Julia woke looking less dead, more human. Found him on the floor with all 3 babies, playing with a set of soft blocks that looked ancient. You're still here, she said. I told you I would be, Russell said. You missed a whole day of work, Julia said. I had sick days saved up, Russell said. This seemed like a good use for one. Julia sat down next to him on the floor. Lark immediately crawled over to her, babbling. Julia picked her up, held her close. I don't know how to do this, she said quietly. How to raise them alone. How to be enough for 3 people when I'm barely enough for 1. You're not alone anymore, Russell said. You don't have to be. I don't know how to trust you, Julia said. I don't know how to let you in without being terrified you'll leave again. Then don't trust me, Russell said. Watch me. Judge me by what I do, not what I say. And if I ever give you a reason to doubt me, throw me out. But until then, let me help, please. Julia looked at him with wet eyes. Why are you doing this? Really, is it guilt? Obligation? Some need to feel like a good person? It started as guilt, Russell admitted. But it's not that anymore. I love them. I look at these 3 little humans, and I love them so much it terrifies me. I'd do anything for them, and that includes respecting that you're their mother, and I'm just... He paused. I'm just whoever you'll let me be. Julia wiped her eyes. They're going to be one soon. I'm planning a small party, just me and Temperance and the girls. But if you want to come... She stopped, took a breath. You can come, if you want. It was the first time Julia had invited him to anything. Russell felt something crack open in his chest. I'd love that. Thank you. Don't thank me, Julia said. Just show up. I will, Russell promised. I always will. Chapter 8. The Price of Proximity. The party was on a Saturday in Julia's tiny apartment. Temperance brought her family. Julia made a cake from a box mix. They sang to 3 confused babies who didn't understand what was happening, but enjoyed the attention. Russell brought nothing. No gifts, no supplies, nothing that would violate Julia's rules. Just himself. Wren, Sparrow, and Lark were fascinated by their cake, 3 small smashes that ended with babies covered in frosting and everyone laughing. Russell helped clean up. Stayed for 3 hours instead of his usual 1. Julia didn't send him away. When everyone was leaving, Wren took her first real steps. She'd been cruising along furniture for weeks, but this was different. She let go of the couch, looked directly at Russell, and walked. 3 wobbling steps into his arms. Russell caught her, laughing with shock and joy. Looked up at Julia. Julia was frozen, face unreadable. The moment stretched. Her first steps, Temperance said, breaking the tension. How wonderful. But Russell saw it. Saw the pain flash across Julia's face. Wren's first steps hadn't been to her mother. They'd been to him. Julia excused herself. Went to the bathroom. Came back composed but distant. The party wrapped up quickly after that. When everyone left, Russell stayed to help finish cleaning. Julia worked in silence. Finally, he said, I'm sorry. For what? Julia asked, scrubbing a plate. That her first steps were to me. I know that hurt you. Julia's hands stilled. Don't apologize for things you didn't control. Still, Russell said. I'm sorry. Julia set the plate down, turned to face him. Do you know what the worst part is? I'm glad she feels comfortable enough with you to do that. I'm glad she's bonding with you. And I hate that I'm glad. I hate that my daughters are learning to love you when you're the man who destroyed me. I'm not that man anymore, Russell said quietly. Aren't you? Julia asked. How do I know? How do I trust that you won't wake up one day and decide this is too hard? That you won't meet someone new and decide we're an inconvenience? That you won't repeat history? You can't know, Russell said honestly. I can't prove a future that hasn't happened yet. All I can do is keep showing up. Keep being here. Keep being someone you can rely on. I don't want to rely on you, Julia said, and her voice cracked. I don't want my daughters to rely on you. I don't want any of this. I want to go back to when it was just me and them, and I didn't have to worry about whether you'd still be here next week. But I will be, Russell said. I will be here next week, and the week after, and the week after that. You can't promise that, Julia said. I can, Russell said, and I am. I'm promising you right now, I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you tell me to leave and mean it. Julia looked at him, really looked at him. I asked you to leave 3 times today, she said. In my head, watching you with them, seeing how happy they are with you, I wanted to tell you to get out, to stop confusing everything, but I didn't. Do you know why? Russell shook his head. Because they need you, Julia said. My daughters need their father, and as much as I hate admitting it, you've become that. You show up, you help, you love them. You're actually being a father, and it kills me that you figured out how to be that person only after you destroyed our marriage. I was a coward before, Russell said. I was so terrified of being poor again that I sabotaged everything good in my life. But Julia, losing you, losing them before I even knew they existed, it broke something in me, or fixed something. I don't know. All I know is that I'm not that person anymore. I can't be, not when I have 3 daughters who deserve better. Julia wiped her eyes. I think you should leave now. Okay, Russell said, started gathering his things. Not because I'm angry, Julia added, because I need to think about what this is becoming, about whether I can actually trust you, about... She stopped. Just go. Please. Russell left, walked down the stairs in a daze, sat in his car for a long time before driving home. The next Monday, he showed up at 6 sharp. Julia opened the door, let him in without a word. They worked together in tense silence. At 8, as he was leaving, Julia said, I'm adding you to the birth certificates, officially, as their father. Russell stopped breathing. Are you sure? No, Julia said honestly, but they deserve to have it documented, and you've earned at least that much. Thank you, Russell said. I know what it cost you to do that. Don't make me regret it, Julia said. It was a plea, not a threat. I won't, Russell promised. I swear to you, I won't. The next few weeks, something shifted. Julia started asking Russell to stay longer sometimes, an extra 30 minutes, an hour. She started telling him about the girls' milestones without him having to ask. Started accepting small things, his help fixing a leaky faucet, his suggestion for a better formula brand, his presence during a particularly difficult night when all 3 babies were sick. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't even friendship, but it was something, a tentative truce, a possibility. One morning, Russell arrived to find Julia's friend Temperance there. She pulled him aside while Julia was with the babies. I don't like you, Temperance said bluntly. I probably never will. You destroyed my best friend. I know, Russell said. I don't expect you to like me. Good, Temperance said, but I'm watching you. I see how hard Julia's working to trust you. I see how those babies are starting to count on you. If you hurt them, if you disappoint her again, I'll make sure you regret it, understand? I understand, Russell said, and I'm grateful Julia has you looking out for her. Temperance studied him. She's softening toward you. Did you know that? She tries to hide it, but I see it. She's starting to remember who you were before you became who you were, and that terrifies her, because what if the person she's starting to see isn't real? What if it's just an act? It's not an act, Russell said. Then prove it, Temperance said. Keep proving it, every day, forever, because that's what it's going to take. Time moved forward. The babies learned to walk, all 3 within weeks of each other, started saying simple words. Mama was first, always. Russell waited for Dada, but it didn't come. He didn't push it. Julia started smiling occasionally, real smiles, not the brittle ones she'd worn like armor. She'd laugh sometimes when the babies did something funny, and the sound was like sunlight breaking through clouds. Russell fell in love with his daughters more every day. The way Wren would scrunch her nose when she was thinking, the way Sparrow would pat his face with her tiny hands, the way Lark would curl up against him and fall asleep like he was the safest place in the world. He fell in love with watching Julia be their mother too. The way she was patient even when exhausted, the way she sang to them in a voice that was rusty but beautiful, the way she'd check on them 100 times while they slept just to make sure they were breathing. He didn't tell her any of this, kept it locked away. Because this wasn't about him and Julia. This was about three little girls who were learning to navigate a world where they had two parents who loved them but couldn't love each other. One evening, Russell had started staying. Until the babies went down for the night, helping with dinner and bath time, Julia asked him to stay after they were asleep. "We need to talk," she said, and Russell's stomach dropped. They sat at the small table. Julia took a long breath. "The babies are going to start asking questions soon about why we don't live together, about why Daddy leaves every night, about why Mama and Daddy don't act like Temperance and her husband." What do you want to tell them?" Russell asked. "The truth," Julia said. "Age-appropriate versions, but the truth, that you're their father, that I'm their mother, that we love them, but we're not together." "Okay," Russell said. "But I need to know," Julia continued. "Are you in this forever? Or is there going to be a point where you meet someone new and we become an obligation instead of a priority? Because I can handle that, but they can't. So I need to know now, before they're old enough to understand heartbreak." Russell met her eyes. "There's no one else. There won't be anyone else. This is my life now. Those three girls are my life. And you—" He stopped, started again. "You're their mother, which means you're part of my life too, whether we're together or not. So no, I'm not going anywhere. This is it for me." Julia looked at him for a long moment. "I believe you," she said quietly. "And that's the most terrifying thing I've ever admitted." "Why terrifying?" Russell asked. "Because if I believe you, and you're lying, it'll destroy me all over again," Julia said. "But if I believe you and you're telling the truth, then I have to figure out what that means. How to co-parent with the man who broke my heart. How to let you be close to them without letting you too close to me. How to forgive without forgetting. How to move forward when I'm still standing in the wreckage of what we were." "You don't have to figure it all out now," Russell said. "We can take it one day at a time, one morning at a time, whatever pace you need." Julia nodded. "Okay. But Russell—" "Yeah?" "Thank you for showing up, for staying, for being what they need. It doesn't fix what you did, but it matters anyway." It wasn't forgiveness, but it was acknowledgement. It was Julia seeing him as more than just the man who'd hurt her. It was progress. Chapter 9. The Erosion of Certainty. Time passed differently now, not in weeks or months, but in milestones. The first time Sparrow said "Dada." The first time Lark threw a tantrum. The first time Wren insisted on dressing herself and came out wearing mismatched everything and enormous pride. Russell was there for all of it. Had been there so consistently for so long that his presence became routine, expected. The girls would watch for him in the morning, faces lighting up when he walked through the door. They'd drag him into their games, their stories, their entire world. Julia watched it happen. Watched her daughters love their father, watched Russell be patient and present and everything he hadn't been with her. It created a strange ache. Not jealousy exactly, but something adjacent to it. One morning, Russell arrived to find Julia already awake, making actual breakfast instead of just grabbing whatever was fastest. The girls were eating cereal. The apartment was tidier than usual. Julia had put on real clothes instead of just pajamas. "Special occasion?" Russell asked. "I have a job interview," Julia said. "At the symphony. They're hiring for a session violinist position. It's only part-time, but it's actual music work. I can't believe they're even considering me after I disappeared for so long." "That's amazing," Russell said. "When?" 9:30. "Temperance is coming to watch the girls. I'll be back by noon." Julia paused. "Unless you wanted to stay? I know it's past your usual time, but if you could—" "Of course," Russell said immediately. "Stay as long as you need. I'll call into school." Julia looked at him strangely. "You'd do that? Call in sick for me?" "In a heartbeat," Russell said. This is important. You should go without worrying about them. Something shifted in Julia's expression. Thank you, she said quietly. She left. Russell spent the morning with 3 busy toddlers who had suddenly become mobile and opinionated. He made them lunch, got them down for naps, cleaned the apartment because it needed it and he could. Julia returned at 1, glowing. I got it, she said. The position. I start next week. That's incredible, Russell said, and meant it. Seeing Julia come back to life piece by piece meant more than anything. Over the next few months, Julia started working. Just 8 hours a week at first, then 12. Russell adjusted his schedule to help. Came earlier some mornings, stayed later others. Whatever worked, the girls grew, started preschool part-time, made friends, became tiny people with opinions and preferences and personalities that astounded both their parents daily. Julia started looking less exhausted, started talking about music with the same passion she'd had years ago, started seeming like herself again, and Russell fell in love with her all over again, watching her come back to life, watching her rebuild what he'd destroyed, watching her be strong and fierce and beautiful in ways that had nothing to do with him. He didn't tell her, kept it buried, because Julia was learning to trust him as a co-parent, and he wouldn't jeopardize that by complicating things with feelings she didn't share. One evening, after the girls were asleep, Julia asked him to stay. They'd been doing this sometimes, talking after the babies went down, mostly about logistics and schedules, sometimes about bigger things. Temperance thinks I'm crazy, Julia said without preamble. She thinks I've forgiven you too easily, that I'm setting myself up to get hurt again. Have you? Russell asked. Forgiven me? Julia was quiet for a long time. I don't know. I've stopped hating you. I've started trusting you. But forgiveness, I don't know if that's possible. You can't forgive someone for nearly destroying you. No, Russell agreed. You can't. But I can appreciate who you've become, Julia continued. I can acknowledge that you're a good father, that you've kept every promise you've made to me and the girls, that you've been, she paused, dependable, constant, real. I'm trying, Russell said. I know, Julia said. And it's strange because the man I married never tried. He just was. He was good and kind and true without effort. But you have to work at it. I can see you working at being the person they need. And somehow that makes it more valuable. Because you're choosing it every day. Russell didn't know what to say to that. Julia stood, walked to the window. They're going to turn 3 soon. 3 years since I gave birth to them alone. 3 years since I decided to protect them from their own father. And here we are, co-parenting, being civil, almost being friends. Is that what we are? Russell asked. Friends? Julia turned to face him. I don't know what we are. We're not enemies anymore. We're not strangers. We're bound together by 3 little girls who need us both. So we're something. Something I don't have a name for. That's okay, Russell said. We don't need a name for it. Julia nodded. The girls asked me yesterday if you were going to live here. Wren specifically. She said she wanted you to stay for breakfast and stories and bedtime. All the time. Russell's chest tightened. What did you tell her? Well, that you have your own home. That you visit because you love them. That some families look different than others, and that's okay. Julia paused. She asked if you loved me too. The question hung in the air. Russell could lie. Should lie. Keep things simple. But Julia deserved truth. What did you say? I said I didn't know, Julia answered. Because I don't. Do you? Love me? Russell stood, walked to where she was standing, looked her in the eyes. Yes, I love you. I never stopped loving you. But that doesn't mean anything because love wasn't our problem. Trust was, respect was, and I destroyed both of those. So what I feel doesn't matter. It matters, Julia said quietly. It might not change anything, but it matters. What do you feel? Russell asked. About me? Julia took a long breath. I feel confused. I feel angry sometimes at how easy it would be to fall back into loving you. I feel scared that if I let myself feel anything, you'll disappoint me again. I feel grateful for who you've become, and furious that you couldn't be that person when we were married. I feel, she stopped, I feel too much, and I don't know what to do with any of it. You don't have to do anything with it, Russell said. We can just be whatever we are right now. Parents who are learning to work together. People who care about each other's well-being because it affects our daughters. That's enough. Is it? Julia asked. Is it enough for you? It has to be, Russell said. Because asking for more isn't fair. Not after what I did. Julia looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something she hadn't done in over 3 years. She reached out and touched his face. Just her palm against his cheek, gentle, tentative. I don't know how to trust you with my heart again, she whispered. But I'm starting to trust you with theirs. And maybe that's where we start. Russell stood very still. Where we start what? I don't know, Julia admitted. But I'm tired of being angry. I'm tired of holding on to what happened like it's armor. I'm tired of pretending that watching you be their father doesn't make me remember why I loved you in the first place. She dropped her hand. Step back. I'm not saying I forgive you. I'm not saying we can be what we were. But maybe we can figure out what we are now, if you want to. I want to, Russell said immediately. Whatever that looks like. However long it takes, I want to try. Julia nodded. Okay, then we'll try, slowly, carefully, with no expectations. Just trying. It wasn't a reunion. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was possibility. And possibility was more than Russell had dared hope for. The girl's 3rd birthday arrived. This time, the party was bigger. Preschool friends, neighbors, a small celebration that felt like joy instead of survival. Russell helped set up. Stayed the whole day. Julia let him. When the girls blew out their candles, 3 cakes because they couldn't agree on one flavor, they looked at both their parents with identical expressions of pure happiness. Like their world was complete. After everyone left, after the girls were asleep, Julia and Russell cleaned up together in comfortable silence. When they finished, Julia said, Stay just tonight. Sleep on the couch. So you're here when they wake up. They'd love that. Russell stayed. Woke at dawn to 3 little girls climbing on him, giggling. Julia made breakfast. They ate together like a family. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't fixed. But it was real, and real was enough. 3 weeks later, on an ordinary Wednesday morning, Russell arrived at 6 to find Julia standing at the door with an expression he couldn't read. We need to really talk, she said. Not about schedules or the girls, about us. About whether there even is an us, tonight, after they're asleep. This decides everything. Chapter 10, The Impossible Reunion. Russell arrived early. Julia opened the door, baby's already asleep. She'd made coffee. They sat across from each other at her small kitchen table. Julia wrapped her hands around her mug. When you first came back, all I felt was rage. Pure burning rage. You destroyed everything and then had the audacity to show up like you deserved to be there. I didn't deserve anything, Russell said. No, you didn't, Julia agreed. But you kept showing up anyway. Even when I was cruel, you just kept coming back. She took a sip of coffee. I told myself you'd get tired of the early mornings and the crying, that you'd realize it was too hard and disappear again. I was waiting for it. I know, Russell said. But you didn't leave, Julia continued. Years of never missing a morning, of showing up sick, exhausted, but showing up. Years of being exactly who I told you to be. And somewhere in those years, I stopped waiting for you to leave. I stopped seeing you as the man who betrayed me and started seeing you as just Russell. Their father, someone I could depend on. And that terrified me more than the hate did. Why? Russell asked. Because hate is safe. Hate is armor. But trusting you, that leaves me vulnerable. And I've spent years building walls to make sure I'd never be vulnerable to you again. Russell's throat was tight. Are you saying you want to keep those walls up? I'm saying I don't think I can anymore. And I don't know if that's healing or stupidity. She stood up, started pacing. I need complete honesty. Why did you really betray me? The real reason. Russell had asked himself this question 1,000 times. I was ashamed of loving you, he said finally. Ashamed that you'd seen me at my absolute lowest. When I became successful, I wanted to erase all of that. But you were living proof that I'd been weak. So I tried to erase you. Julia flinched. That's honest. The truth is, I was a coward, Russell said. I couldn't stand being loved by someone who knew all my failures. Just the fact that you'd seen me weak made me want to destroy what we had. And now, Julia asked, you've spent years having these 3 little girls see you fail constantly. Why doesn't that make you want to run? Russell thought about it. Because they need me to be human. But you needed me to be strong. And I couldn't stand that you knew I wasn't. I punished you for seeing the real me. That's incredibly messed up, Julia said. I know. Julia stopped pacing. Here's what I need to know. If we tried again, would you hate me for seeing you struggle? Because I've watched you be terrible at parenting. I've seen all of it. So if we did this, you don't get to later decide I've seen too much. I won't, Russell said. That version of me is dead. And I'm not saying that to manipulate you. I'm saying it because it's true. Julia crossed her arms. Prove it, right now. Tell me something that makes you feel weak. Something you'd normally hide. Russell took a breath. I'm terrified every single day that I'm not enough. That those 3 girls will grow up and realize their father is just a mediocre man who got lucky once. I'm terrified that you'll wake up one day and realize you've wasted years letting me back in. I'm terrified that I'm fundamentally broken and that no amount of therapy or time or trying will ever fix it. His voice cracked. I'm terrified that everything I am is just performance, that there's no real self underneath. And I'm most terrified that you'll see all of that and confirm that I was right to be ashamed. Silence. Julia stared at him. Thank you, Julia said quietly, for trusting me with that. So what now? Russell asked. Julia sat back down. I want to try. Not what we were, that's dead, but maybe something new. Something built on who we actually are. Hope blazed in Russell's chest. Are you sure? No, Julia admitted. I'm terrified. But I'm also tired of being alone. Tired of co-parenting someone I still have feelings for while pretending I don't. She reached across the table, took his hand. But we do this my way, slowly, with rules. And the second you make me regret this, I end it. Understand? I understand, Russell said. Whatever rules you need. Julia nodded. Okay, then we try. I don't know how to do this, Julia admitted. I don't know how to date the father of my children. Neither do I, Russell said. So we figure it out together. They stayed up talking until midnight. About how they'd structure this. About what they'd tell the girls. The next morning he arrived as usual. Julia opened the door with a shy smile. Hi, Russell said back. As Russell was leaving, Julia walked him to the door. So we're doing this. We're doing this, Russell confirmed. It's going to be messy, Julia warned. I'm going to have moments where I doubt everything, where I remember what happened and panic. I know, Russell said. And I'll be here through all of it. Julia looked up at him. Can I try something? Anything, Russell said. She leaned up and kissed him, quick, tentative. The world didn't end. Russell kissed her back carefully. When they broke apart, Julia was crying. Why are you crying? Russell asked. Because I thought I'd never feel this again, Julia said. But I just kissed you, and instead of feeling scared, I felt hope. The next weeks were strange and wonderful. They went on actual dates. They talked constantly. There were hard moments. Julia had a panic attack during dinner when Russell mentioned a trip. You're going away? Just overnight for work. But I can cancel. No, Julia interrupted. I need to learn that you going away doesn't mean you're not coming back, so go. And when you come back exactly when you say you will, it'll help me believe. Russell went. Called her multiple times. Returned exactly when promised. Julia cried when he walked through the door right on time. Small steps. Small victories. Months later, Julia asked Russell to stay the night. Not for anything physical. Just to be here. So the girls wake up and we're both here. Russell stayed. Slept on the couch. Woken to 3 little girls jumping on him at dawn. Again, Wren demanded. Daddy, stay again. Julia looked at Russell. He mouthed, your call. She nodded. Okay, Daddy can stay again. One night, months into their second attempt, Julia sat down next to him. I need to tell you something. I think I'm falling in love with you again. Not the old you, but the actual you, the man who shows up every day. I'm falling in love with who you've become, and it terrifies me. What if this is real? Russell asked quietly. What if I really have changed? I don't know if I believe in second chances, Julia said. You've given me thousands of them, Russell pointed out. Every morning I showed up and you let me in was a second chance. This is different. This is a chance to be mine again. And I don't know if I can survive losing you twice. Russell took her hand. You won't lose me. Julia, I love you. I love the woman you are now. Stronger and fiercer and more sure of yourself. I love the mother you've become. All of it. Julia kissed him deeply. When she pulled back, she said, I think we might actually make it. Maybe not right now, maybe not smoothly, but eventually we will be, Russell said. Whatever it takes. That afternoon, Julia pulled him aside. I think we should tell them. Let them see us being affectionate. Let them know that Mama and Daddy are figuring things out. They kissed. And from behind them, 3 little voices erupted in giggles. You kissing, Sparrow said, delighted. Are you and Daddy friends now? Wren asked. Julia looked at Russell. Together, they said, we're trying to be. Good, Lark said decisively. I like when Daddy stays. Julia leaned against Russell. We're really doing this. We are, Russell confirmed. And it's going to be beautiful. Epilogue years later. Russell Phoenix stood in the kitchen of the house he and Julia had bought together, making breakfast. Wren, Sparrow and Lark were at the table arguing. Julia was getting ready for a performance. She'd been made principal violinist and was playing a solo tonight. You're going to be late, Russell called. I can't find my other earring. Left bathroom drawer. Julia appeared fully dressed. She looked radiant. She kissed Russell quickly, then kissed each daughter. Be good for Daddy. Russell served breakfast. Got 3 girls ready for kindergarten. Dropped them off. Taught his classes. Picked them up. Helped with homework. Made dinner. Did bath time and tucked 3 exhausted children into bed. When Julia came home late, she found Russell on the couch with his eyes closed. That bad? She asked, sitting next to him. Wren decided she's a vegetarian. Sparrow announced she's going to be a doctor. Lark tried to cut her own hair. Pretty standard Tuesday, Julia laughed. How much hair did she lose? Not much. I caught her in time. Julia leaned against him. How was the concert? You were incredible, Russell said. Julia smiled. I love you. I love you too, Russell said. I always have, even when I was too broken to show it properly. Even when I destroyed everything. I've always loved you. Julia kissed him. We did it. We actually made it back to each other. We did, Russell agreed. Took years of me showing up and you learning to trust again. But we made it. Are you happy? Julia asked. Russell thought about his 3 daughters sleeping upstairs. About the woman beside him who'd given him more chances than he'd deserved. About the life they'd built from ruins. I'm happier than I ever thought possible. You? Terrified and hopeful and exhausted and grateful, Julia said. Which means yes, I'm happy. They sat together in comfortable silence. Somewhere upstairs, one of the girls cried out. Julia stopped Russell. I'll go. She came back 5 minutes later. Lark had a nightmare. She's fine now. They went to bed together. In the morning, they'd wake up to chaos and pancakes and 3 little girls who looked at them like they hung the stars. But tonight, they slept. 2 people who'd broken each other and themselves. 2 people who'd spent years learning how to be whole again. 2 people who'd discovered that sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about perfect people finding each other. They're about broken people choosing to keep trying. The end.